Los Angeles, 1947. The City of Angels was drowning in shadows, the kind that slithered down alleys and whispered in the corners of dimly lit bars. The name Spade, Ace Spade. I was at my desk in the LAPD Detective Division, nursing a cup of coffee that tasted like it had been brewed in a rusty radiator. My partner, Benson, a German Shepherd with more enthusiasm than grace, was sprawled on the floor, chewing on what used to be a department-issued nightstick. Benson, that's government property. He glanced up, bits of splintered wood dangling from his slobber-coated mouth, and wagged his tail. Before I could start my usual tirade, Captain Mulligan stormed in, his face red enough to stop traffic. "Spade, Benson, we got a big one. Jewelry store on 5th was hit this morning. Armed robbery, 2 suspects, clean getaway, you're on it. Just another day in paradise, huh, Benson?" Benson barked, promptly knocking over my coffee. The scene at Belmont's Jewelers was chaos. Glass cases lay shattered and diamonds worth a small fortune had vanished into thin air. Mr. Belmont, the owner, was pacing like a caged tiger.
They came in just after we opened. 2 men, ski masks, guns drawn. They knew exactly what they were after, went straight for the high-end pieces. 5 minutes, and they were gone.
"Anyone hurt?" I asked, crouching to examine a display case. Benson was busy sticking his nose into a trash bin.
"No, thank heavens, but they left nothing behind. No prints, no fibers, nothing."
"Everyone leaves something behind," I muttered, brushing glass shards away. "Benson, get your nose out of there before you find last week's tuna sandwich." Benson barked indignantly, then promptly sneezed into the evidence bag. Back at the precinct, I studied the security footage. 2 men in ski masks moved like pros, one with a gun, and the other with tools that made short work of the safe. No prints, no usable footage, just shadows in the shape of men. Captain Mulligan burst in, slapping a file on my desk. "Word on the street says Mickey the locksmith Faber's back in town. If anyone's cracking safes like this, it's him. Go see what he knows." Benson barked in agreement, his tail knocking over the potted plant. "Nice going, Benson. You're a one-dog wrecking crew." Mickey's haunt was a dive bar on the edge of town, the kind of place where the jukebox only played Heartbreak. Mickey himself was a wiry man with fingers that never stopped twitching.
"Detective Spade, to what do I owe the pleasure?"
"Cut the charm, Mickey. Jewelry store on 5th was hit this morning. Safe job had your name written all over it." Mickey laughed, but it didn't reach his eyes.
"I'm flattered, but I've been out of the game, haven't touched a safe in months."
Benson growled, sniffing Mickey's jacket. Benson was trained to smell gunpowder. The smell of gun oil was faint but unmistakable. "You've been shooting recently, Mickey?"
I hit the range now and then."
"Sure you do. Don't leave town, Mickey, and tell your friends to stop feeding Benson pretzels." 2 days later, everything went south. Mulligan called me into his office, his face darker than a storm cloud. "Spade, we've got a problem. Evidence from the Belmont case has your prints all over it. The DA's looking into you. Until this clears up, you're off the case." "What? That's insane. You know I'm being framed." I stormed out, furious. "They're framing us, Benson. They're trying to make us look like the bad guys. But 2 can play at that game." Benson wagged his tail and licked my hand. "Thanks, buddy. Let's prove we're not the ones barking up the wrong tree." A week went by and we dug deeper, starting with Mickey. Turns out, one of my informants had mentioned he'd been paid off to keep quiet by 2 men matching the suspects' descriptions. An anonymous tip led us to an abandoned warehouse where we found blueprints of Belmont's Jewelers and a list of stolen items sprawled across a table. The names at the top of the list? Tony Trigger Malone and Danny Brains Costa, 2 career criminals who were smart enough to cover their tracks. Their motive? Revenge. Tony had been arrested years ago after a botched heist thanks to a tip from Belmont himself. This wasn't just a robbery, it was payback. The docks were as quiet as a morgue at midnight, the fog rolling in off the water like a ghostly curtain. Malone and Costa stood at the edge of the pier, their dark silhouettes barely visible in the dim glow of the dock lamps. Benson and I crouched behind a stack of crates, watching their every move. "This is it, Benson. We've got them dead to rights. All we have to do is wait for them to—" Before I could finish, Benson sneezed, not a quiet, polite sneeze. No, this was the canine equivalent of a foghorn, loud enough to echo across the docks.
Who's there? Costa pulled out a flashlight, the beam slicing through the mist.
Crap. Nice going, Benson. But Benson had already slipped out from behind the crates, his tail wagging nervously. Great. Stealth isn't your strong suit, is it? Benson, however, had a plan. He trotted forward, looking for all the world like an innocent lost dog. He even let out a small, pitiful whine as he approached the men, his big brown eyes gleaming in the dock light.
What the hell, is that a dog? Looks like it. What's a dog doing here? Probably a stray. Shoo mutt.
He waved his gun dismissively, but Benson didn't flinch. Instead, he wagged his tail harder, his tongue lolling out as he patted closer.
Aw, he's kinda cute. Cute, he's a mangy.
Before he could finish, Benson made his move. In a blur of fur and determination, Benson lunged. He clamped his jaws around Malone's wrist, sending the gun clattering to the ground. Malone howled in pain, trying to shake him off, but Benson held firm, his growl low and menacing. I seized the moment, stepping out from the shadows with my revolver drawn. "Drop it, Costa!" Costa froze, his flashlight trembling in his hand.
Okay.
He stammered, dropping the light and raising his hands. Meanwhile, Benson released Malone's wrist, his work done. The big man staggered back, clutching his arm and glaring at the dog.
You crazy mutt.
But Benson just stood there, panting proudly, his tail wagging as if to say, "Yeah, I did that. Good boy, Benson. Maybe you're not so clumsy after all." Benson barked triumphantly, turning his attention to Costa, who flinched. "And don't think about running. He's got a taste for crooks now. Turn around and put your hands behind your back." As we marched the pair back to the squad car, Benson trotted alongside me, his head held high. He might have been clumsy, but when it mattered most, he'd proven himself braver than any cop I'd ever worked with. "Not bad, partner," I muttered, scratching his ears. Benson barked, his tail wagging furiously, and in that moment I realized he wasn't just a dog, he was my best damn partner. Back at the station, Mulligan shook his head, a rare smile on his face. "You and that dog of yours, you're a disaster, Spade, but you get results." Benson barked happily. The stolen goods were recovered, my name was cleared, and Malone and Costa were behind bars. As for Benson, he got a steak dinner and a commendation for bravery.